We're going to cross to London now and talk about all things to do with foreign affairs with the former Foreign Affairs Minister of this great country, Alexander Downer, live in London. I want to come to some more serious issues in just a moment, Alexander, but first up, I've got to talk to you about the cricket. It's been almost a diplomatic war between Australia and the UK over a stumping. What's it like being an Aussie in London at the moment?
I think a lot of people, after a couple of days of controversy in the UK, have become a bit embarrassed about the way the England cricket team and the MCC supporters behave. Because this was clearly within the stumping was clearly within the laws of cricket. The final decision was made by the umpire. England lost the game. The England captain then started whinging. The Prime Minister then supported the whinging. The MCC went feral. And the public, I think, in the end, became embarrassed by it all. So I think Australia's come out of it looking quite good. And what's more, we won the game.
Yeah, I'm very pleased to hear you say that. And I know you caught up with Rishi Sunak, the British Prime Minister, just a few days ago. But I want to show you this ad for Victoria Bitter. I'm certain you and I have shared a VB or two over the years. Look at this ad that I've got for their new product, the English Bitter.
You can get it getting stumped. You can get it complaining to the umps. You can get it throwing away your wicket. You can get it invoking the spirit of cricket. You can get it if you're Ben Stokes. You can get it if you're that coach. Yes, our beer may be bitter, but our cricket team isn't. So England, we've got a beer with your name on it for when you change your mind. England, England, bitter. 18 plus, drink responsibly.
Great advertising it. England Bitter. What do you reckon of that, Alexander?
I think it's fantastic, yeah. And it says it all, you know, the England captain, the coach, by the way, McCullum is a New Zealander. People might recall his name from cricket over the years. I mean, they just sounded pitifully bitter. Look, as I said in interviews, when you lose, and you do lose in life from time to time, it's always good to lose with dignity, to pretend that you're gracious, even though inside you might be boiling about it. But they lost without dignity. Anyway, they've started again today in Leeds, at Headingley.
Yeah, no, you don't need to mention that. We don't need anyone flicking the channel, all right? Actually, there's a good little local angle on that England Bitter thing because Andrew Killey, who you'd know, the great South Australian advertising genius who used to do all the ads for Coopers, when Adelaide Crows first got into a grand final in Melbourne, they did a Coopers ad saying, "We're making Victoria bitter." So the Victorians have remembered that all these years later to come up with England bitter. Now, I've got to get you onto a serious foreign policy issue here, and you would have been following this around the world, but especially how it's impacting on Australia. And that is these Hong Kong orders, security orders being pursued and threats being made to former citizens of Hong Kong or current citizens of Hong Kong, but who are now living in Australia. This is deeply worrying. Thank God we don't have an extradition treaty with China, but this is deeply worrying, isn't it?
Well, even if we had an extradition treaty with China, the Attorney General would always have the right not to extradite someone, so these people wouldn't be extradited under any circumstances. I think there are two of them in Australia. There are several here in the UK, some in Canada, some in the US. And the Hong Kong authorities are offering a reward for these people to be brought back to Hong Kong. It's unnecessarily threatening. Obviously, none of those countries are going to send these people back or, for that matter, even arrest them. But it just shows how tin-eared the government in Beijing and their supporters in Hong Kong are. They don't understand how this will go down in liberal democracies. And so the Australian Prime Minister has denounced this, and quite rightly so. China needs to understand that this sort of behaviour is just unacceptable to the liberal democratic world.
Yeah, it's frightening for the individuals too, because it will certainly hamper their efforts in travelling around the world. It's such a worry for them. But speaking of Anthony Albanese quite correctly condemning this, what do you think the implications are for his visit, his meetings with the Chinese leadership later this year. Should they go ahead while this sort of threatening behaviour is actually crossing across to people living within our borders?
Well, I think he will go ahead with the meetings. I think this strategy of no speakies with China, well, that was never the Australian government's position, but no speakies with China has been a foolish position. I mean, it's best to talk things through and to talk through the differences that you might have. But he can sit down with them and not only talk about positive collaboration, but talk about where we do basically disagree. I've always found being frank with them was better than just not speaking to them.
Great stuff, Alexander. Thanks for joining us, and I hope you get a case of England bitter over there in London to share with your contemporaries.
They're bitter about us, but now they're embarrassed about their behaviour.
Great stuff.